So, I mean, it did that and allowed us to see that without, pride getting in the way. It's pretty cool. I mean, athletes don't let you see those weaknesses in their abilities. That's when they walk away.
Right, that's for sure. But can you tell me why hasn't the word retirement actually been used? I mean, is that going back to the insurance thing, or
Yeah, because if they say he retires, then they can't get the insurance.
All right, that's what I figured.
It has to be he's physically unable to play.
Yeah, that's what they said at the press conference, and I figured there was some reason for the phrasing of phrasing it the way they did. So, all right.
When can he say he's retired? I mean, does he have to wait?
I think it's 2 more years when the contract is over.
I
believe it's when the contract is over. I mean, in all senses, he's retired. It's just he can't say it.
He can't say it. He's not allowed to speak the word.
Which is sad.
I mean, they would some kind of set. That's worked.
Now, what about Jacob deGrom? I mean, I read that if the Mets had scored 3 runs a game for every game he pitched, that he would have had like 25 wins or something. It was some crazy number like that. That his run production, the Mets' run production for him was so lame and pathetic that he had to go and hit homers or get base hits or whatever he had to do to win a game, or at least try to win a game. I don't think I've ever seen this happen to any pitcher who's up for the Cy Young, and I think personally he should get it. But Jacob never complained about it. I'd be a little angry by now.
Jacob never complained publicly.
Okay, well, that's probably a good thing.
Well, I mean, you can't complain. That's the thing. I mean, that's part of being on a team.
Well, it's also part of the modern day athlete. He's not going to complain. Was he happy about it? Absolutely not. Was he frustrated? Yeah, absolutely. Will it affect him going forward? It affects his thinking. I mean, that statement he sent out through his agent at the All-Star game, that was a very serious comment. And the Mets should have taken it a little more seriously than they did. Because if he wins the Cy Young, Jacob deGrom becomes very expensive in a few years.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And there's going to be no home discount when you consider and there shouldn't be. They've done nothing for him. They've never given the kid anything. He came up, he was supposed to be a reliever. I mean, he was incredibly frustrated. He did a very good job of publicly saying what he should. And he wasn't. The other thing about that is, and what is good about Jacob, he realizes the limitations of him. He's not going to throw guys under the bus that are supposed to do things that they just physically can't.
Right.
Well, put your GM hat on for a second, Kristie. I mean, if you had your druthers, for lack of a better word, would you make deals with either deGrom or Syndergaard, or do you continue to build and hope for the best as far as injuries? Because obviously the last 2 season injuries have crippled this team. Do you sign up for another year of that and hope for the best as far as the injuries go, or do you start to kind of tear it down and build it back up?
Well, I mean, I just think it's ridiculous to continue to go into a season saying the same thing. We have this pitching, we can win behind it. I would trade Syndergaard. Honestly, I haven't seen any improvement in him. He likes to throw hard. Okay, well, hitters are hitting, high velocity fastballs now. I haven't seen any learning to pitch from him. I also have seen stubbornness when it comes to his ability to wanting to take care of himself. The refusal to get the MRI.
Right.
So I trade him in a heartbeat, actually. You could get back probably 4 prospects, probably 2 major league ready. In fact, I know there was a team that's, in the playoffs now that was willing to give up a guy that had hit significant home runs in the major leagues the year before for Syndergaard at the deadline. You're not going to get the same thing in the winter, but you're going to get players that can help repopulate a player development program that's just horrendous.
Yeah, the Mets system is even though I like the kid that they drafted, Kalanick, in the first round this past year, but it's still a system that is really bereft of players. There's not much depth there at all.
Well, they need some relief pitching of a lot, so bad.
Yeah, but that's you're talking different areas.
They're stuck with Swarzak, so that's
true.
$7 million wasted. And they're stuck with Vargas. They are stuck.
Who pitched better at the end of the year? He wasn't as bad, but he had a few good starts. But for the overall season of what he gave them, it was
You're
disgraceful.
paying him $8 million a year.
Yeah, it was the overall season. It was disgraceful. But save for a couple of starts at the end of the year. But
you know what? They were probably to blame for some of that too, because he breaks his hamate bone, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he can start opening day." Okay,
no, that doesn't work.
That's not happening. And then they gave him, he'll be fine throwing simulated games from behind the protective screen. No, that's not true. I think he had one rehab game before they rushed him back into the rotation because
Right.
they wanted to get Harvey out, which was just stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it just seems like the Mets, if there's a bad decision to be made with a player's health, the Mets will make that decision. and I don't know why it continues or how it continues, but it just seems like even the Cespedes episode with Cespedes telling the team that he's having surgery and the Mets saying, well, no, you're not having surgery, and then a week later he's having surgery.
Yeah, that's always and that's partly insurance too, though.
Okay.
And I mean, the problem the Mets had with that one is, one, there was no communication between them and Cespedes when he was in Port St. Lucie. Like, one day he showed up playing first base. He told them he was going to play first base. He was going to work out there. And the rehab and minor league staff's like, oh, okay. They assumed the major league staff had said he needs to play first base. He started doing drills at first base. The major league staff's like, what's going on? So, the communication was not there. With Cespedes, if they had just said what was going on, if they said they were trying to get him examined by the doctor who does the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
And that week was the week before training camp started for the NFL. If they had just come out and said that, people would have understood why it took so many days, because the guy was busy.
Yeah,
right.
If you just said that, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. But, they just continued to. I don't know what they were thinking on that one, honestly. I mean, it was just a fiasco.
Let me ask you one more thing. I wanted to talk about one of the feel-good stories of the Mets this year, and for me, it was Zach Wheeler finally becoming the kind of pitcher that so many people expected when the Mets traded for him all those years ago. Just talk about, was there anything in particular that you saw from Wheeler this season that allowed him? I mean, he was DeGrom-like in the second half.
Well, I mean, he's always been very talented. You just have to remember how long he was away from pitching.
Right.
He changed his delivery over the winter. He shortened up his delivery a little bit, and it took a while for him to get used to it. You saw him bouncing a lot of balls in spring training, which was him trying to get used to. I mean, he has a very long body and a very long reach, and he shortened that up. And I think it took a while for him to get used to it. But I think you have to remember, this was always a very talented pitcher.
Oh, without a doubt.
He had pitched probably for 2 years with the Mets with a partial tear in his elbow. So, I think it put the health together, the new mechanics together, and you're finally starting to see the talent come out in him. He also grew up. He was young when he first came up, a little stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 years had been a little bit humbling to him. I actually talked to him the night that they clinched the playoffs in 2005, and, that was really hard for him to sit and watch that team go to the World Series and realize they could do it without him, and he wasn't part of it. And I think he grew up quite a bit.
We're talking with Kristie Ackert, a baseball writer for the New York Daily News. One of the things, You mentioned the 2005 team. SNY, the weekend of David Wright's last game, they played some old games from like 2006, and it's like, wow, what happened to that team? And then you see Willie Randolph, and you're like, they had a lot of things there. And I wanted to ask about Jose Reyes. Is he definitely retiring, or is he coming back, or what's the status with Jose Reyes? Because he is a fan favorite still, even though he hasn't been really producing.
He wants to play. He says his body feels good, and that he thinks he can play. I don't think he's coming back to the Mets.
Oh, okay.
It's time for him to. I'm not really sure there was a role for him. I'm not really sure the manager wanted to have to find places for him, or certainly, at the very least, the manager didn't know how to use him properly.
Right.
So, I think going forward, they're probably going to have to, if Callaway's back, which is what I hear, they're going to have to probably part ways there.
Well, I thought one thing about what Matt Harvey said in an interview. He said, they said, "What team won't you go to?" And he basically said, "Well, the Mets." So, who knows where he ends up. I think Harvey sort of did a little mental rehab with the Reds.
Not towards the end of the season.
Well, I'm just saying. One more question before we leave, Kristie, because I know you have to leave. For years, as a baseball writer in the press room, you're dealing with Jay Horowitz, who I've heard nothing but nice things about. I've never met the man. Timmy, I know, worked with him, and now he's not going to be there every day. He's still going to be there as Mets historian or whatever, which they do need. Can you just give a little background on, or a little story on Jay Horowitz? Because he was there for everyone, it seemed. I never heard anyone talk badly about him. I don't expect you to do that, so I'm just saying.
No. Jay is a wonderful man. He gets portrayed as this bumbling kind of, maybe fool at times. Jay knew how to handle the media pretty well. And what Jay was able to do is he actually liked writers, which is rare these days among PR people. He liked the writers, and he stuck up for us. And in return, I think that sometimes the Mets got they didn't get as many daggers thrown at them because Jay was a good guy, and he could kind of smooth things over. Somebody said to me, the week, basically Jay, was pushed out, and then David had to retire. The Mets lost their heart and soul.
Yeah, that's true. That's two people who were beloved and who meant a lot to the organization. That's for sure.
Well, you
that's
just
a good point.
said something. You said he was pushed out. I wasn't sure that was. That's what I thought, but because I think one thing the Mets do need, and I'm glad he's staying around, but is a Mets historian. This is an ownership seeming to me that sometimes doesn't care about the past. I mean, I don't know, just something that comes across as a Met fan, and you go to you just.
Jay will do a great job at that.
I think he will. I think he will because he goes back. He started 1980. So
I was going to say so much of that for Jay is just personal knowledge.
Yeah, he can probably just sit there and just start talking. And, get him an oral history. That would be a good way to start. Kristie, we thank you for joining us, and have fun continuing what you do. We love what you write, and we've actually put your stuff as links on our Facebook page. So we've been liking what you've been writing. So, but we always like what you write.
I appreciate it.
So thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kristie.
Bye-bye. And that just about does it From the Press Box. My name is Rob Leonard, and joining me, of course, is my brother and award-winning sports writer, Tim Leonard. And, Tim, you're at Twitter at?
At Real Tim Leonard.